Leonardo da Vinci was a true Renaissance genius, so extraordinary that people would stop and stare at the way he walked, thinking it might be the most graceful, perfect walk ever. An underrated talent, he mastered more than 15 fields, including engineering, geology, philosophy, military science, biology, and, of course, art. His IQ is estimated to have been between 180 and 220. Beyond Mona Lisa and The Last Supper, Da Vinci was centuries ahead of his time with his technological ideas. Arthur Schopenhauer said a similar thing about him as, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." But what made him a genius? What set his mind apart, reaching a level of wisdom that few ever attain? That's exactly what I'll be discussing in this video. And more importantly, how we can apply those insights to our own lives. Einstein once wrote to a friend, "I have no special talents. I am just passionately curious." Leonardo da Vinci actually did have special talents, but what truly set him apart was his relentless curiosity. He wanted to understand everything: why people yawn, how they walk on ice in Flanders, methods for squaring a circle, what makes the aortic valve close, how light is processed in the eye, and how that affects perspective in a painting. He gave himself instructions to study the placenta of a calf, the jaw of a crocodile, the tongue of a woodpecker, the muscles of a face, the light of the moon, and the edges of shadows. He dissected 30 corpses, analyzed the mechanics of bird flight, which later helped him design a helicopter, and observed nearly everything with meticulous attention. His curiosity wasn't some magical gift. It was the result of deliberate effort. When he visited the moats surrounding Sforza Castle, he noticed how dragonflies moved their four wings in alternating patterns. When walking through town, he studied how facial expressions reflected emotions. This kind of curiosity isn't exclusive to geniuses. It's something we can all cultivate. Watch how water swirls as it flows into a bowl, just like he did. Then ask yourself why it moves that way. And this kind of curiosity has led to almost every major discovery in history. Einstein, Newton, Steve Jobs, you name it. They all had minds that questioned, explored, and expanded their horizons. Plutarch captured this idea perfectly. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. Curiosity is that fire, and we all have the potential to ignite it. The problem? We rarely give ourselves the space to do so. We're constantly occupied, scrolling, consuming, distracted. But curiosity thrives in boredom. Think about Newton. He was sitting under a tree, lost in thought, when an apple supposedly fell on him. Maybe that exact story isn't entirely accurate, but the principle is true. Breakthroughs happen when the mind is free to wander. That's what made Da Vinci a polymath, and it's something we can all tap into. But there was one more thing that made his observations so sharp, his mind so focused. And that's what I'll talk about next. In his notebooks, Leonardo described a method for sharpening observational skills. He suggested a game where one person would draw a line on a wall, and the players, standing at a distance, would estimate its length using a straw. The winner was the one whose measurement was closest to the actual length. This simple exercise trained the eye to judge proportions and distances with precision, reinforcing his obsession with accuracy in both science and art. Today, scientists believe Leonardo possessed an extraordinary visual ability that allowed him to perceive fleeting moments with stunning accuracy. This rare trait, known as advanced flicker fusion frequency, is found in elite athletes like top tennis and baseball players, helping them process rapid movements faster than the average person. But while some of his visual sharpness may have been natural, much of it came from deliberate practice. This exceptional eyesight allowed him to observe details invisible to most people. One striking example is his discovery that a dragonfly's front and back wings move out of sync, something that modern slow-motion photography only confirmed 4 centuries later. He meticulously sketched this observation, proving that his ability to process visual information was far beyond normal human perception. According to researcher Margaret Livingstone, the Mona Lisa's famous smile is so enigmatic because it captures the precise moment of breaking into a smile, a fleeting expression that Leonardo's sharp eye was able to freeze in time. Most people perceive emotions as static memories, but Leonardo could recognize and capture the exact instant an emotion was forming. His ability is often compared to that of Ted Williams, an American baseball legend who claimed he could see the seams of a baseball as it rotated at high speed, a skill possessed only by the best batters in the world. But Leonardo's observational mastery wasn't just limited to paintings. He applied psychophysics, the study of perception, to create an uncanny emotional depth in his art. His use of the sfumato technique, which blurred edges to create a three-dimensional effect, was influenced by his understanding of how human vision perceives softness in dim light. He painted in overcast or evening conditions, knowing that pupils naturally dilate to let in more light, creating a selective soft focus that made his portraits feel alive. It's incredible how much he achieved simply by noticing what most people overlook. He didn't chase degrees or prestigious schools. He cared only about first-hand experience. And that's what made him not just talented, but one of the most brilliant minds in history. But there was one more thing he did consistently that allowed him to perform across so many fields, and that's what I'll discuss next. While painting The Last Supper, Leonardo would often stare at the work for an hour, make a single small stroke, and then walk away. When Duke Ludovico questioned this, Leonardo explained that creativity requires time for ideas to marinate and intuitions to come together. As he put it, men of lofty genius sometimes accomplish the most when they work least, for their minds are occupied with their ideas and the perfection of their conceptions, to which they afterwards give form. Most of us don't need advice on how to procrastinate. We do it naturally. But procrastinating like Leonardo is a skill. It's not about mindless delay. It's about actively gathering ideas, immersing yourself in details, and then stepping back to let everything simmer. It's closely tied to the power of boredom. Ida LeChan put it beautifully. When we cannot bear to be alone, it means we do not properly value the only companion we will have from birth to death, ourselves. Researchers Sandy Mann and Rebecca Cadman explored this connection between boredom and creativity. In their experiment, participants were given a tedious task, either copying numbers from a phone book or simply reading it. Afterward, they were asked to brainstorm creative uses for everyday objects like plastic cups. The results were surprising. Those who had simply read the phone book, experiencing more passive boredom, generated more creative ideas than those who had to copy numbers. This suggests that certain types of boredom, especially the kind that requires little mental effort, actually enhance divergent thinking and creativity. Constant work without rest leads to burnout. Sometimes the mind needs to slow down so ideas can take shape. Leonardo understood this, and it's one of the reasons he was so admired, not just for his genius, but for how he lived. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just a genius. He was also incredibly strong and athletic. In his time, he was known as the strongest man in Florence and would impress visitors to his studio by bending horseshoes with his bare hands. Raised in his father's household, he trained in physical pursuits like horsemanship and fencing, keeping himself in peak condition well into old age. He was also an avid walker and hiker, always staying active. But his commitment to physical fitness wasn't just about strength. It was deeply tied to his creativity, proving the link between movement and mental sharpness. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Exercise has been shown to boost cognitive flexibility, the brain's ability to shift thinking, generate new ideas, and solve problems creatively. Studies reveal that even a single session of exercise, like a 30-minute brisk walk, can significantly enhance cognitive function. Leonardo may not have had scientific proof of these benefits, but he clearly understood them. And honestly, with his level of intelligence, I wouldn't be surprised if he did figure it out. What a man. But there was something even deeper in his mindset. Something that explains his endless curiosity and mastery of so many fields. Leonardo da Vinci's brilliance came from his ability to see connections where others saw separation. His philosophy is summed up in one of his most famous quotes: "To develop a complete mind, study the art of science, study the science of art. Learn how to see. Realize that everything connects to everything else." He understood that the world is built on dualities, light and dark, science and art, logic and creativity. But rather than treating them as opposites, he saw them as two sides of the same coin, deeply interconnected and essential to a greater whole. Each opposite contains a piece of its counterpart. Just as light defines darkness, and vice versa, true understanding comes from embracing both and seeing how they interweave. This mindset allowed him to master multiple disciplines, from anatomy to engineering to painting, because he saw them all as part of one giant puzzle. For Leonardo, nothing existed in isolation. The universe, nature, human thought, it was all part of a grand, harmonious system. And by training ourselves to learn how to see, we can break through the illusion of separateness and recognize how everything is woven together. But how did he keep track of all these interconnected ideas? How did he organize his thoughts in a way that fueled his genius? Well, he had a habit, one that I follow myself, and one that helps me stay on track with my life and even with writing these scripts. Most people's to-do lists are pretty dull. They jot down things like pick up laundry or buy milk and eggs. Leonardo da Vinci was not most people, and his to-do lists, they were anything but ordinary. He carried a notebook everywhere, writing and sketching anything that caught his attention. "It is useful," he once wrote, "to constantly observe, note, and consider." And buried in his notebooks from the 1490s, we find his to-do list. NPR's Robert Krulwich had it directly translated, and it included tasks like measure the city of Milan and its suburbs. Ask Maestro Antonio how mortars are positioned on bastions by day or night. Find a master of hydraulics and learn how to repair locks, canals, and mills in the Lombard style. Later, around 1510, his to-do lists shifted toward anatomy. In a notebook filled with stunningly detailed sketches of bones and organs, he listed tasks like get a human skull. Da Vinci's notebooks weren't just records of his thoughts, they were a reflection of his insatiable curiosity and restless mind. It's no surprise that centuries later, we're still in awe of him. His methods, his mindset, his habits, they weren't just the key to his genius. They're something we can learn from, apply, and use to expand our own creativity, knowledge, and way of seeing the world.